It feels like the last artifact of the turn of the millennium is a dodgy Supreme Court decision, which is regrettable because it is the biggest event that tells us that the universe sees the odometer turning of the Western Hemisphere of the planet Earth isn't too relevant to it, generally. But the biggest event of the millennium wasn't. It was Y2K, the time that we were worried that computer infrastructure built from an era where 2 additional characters was excessive memory, and the year 2000 was 30 years away. We thought we wouldn't be able to handle a change from the year 99 to the year 0. We spent almost $500 billion in today's money to prepare for Y2K, while even now, in 2020, we are seeing the effects of Y2K. Most people weren't aware of any disruptions. It was a crisis, a real crisis that we collectively decided not to have, with forethought and hard work. And while it shouldn't be, when you look back on it, it's surprising. This is Morning Perfect Base. I am Van Velding. I am going to work on my Minecraft stuff a little bit at random time intervals, and after a few of those, we're going to see how much progress I've made. Today, I'm, oops, this is why they say you should never point a crossbow at anything you don't intend to destroy. That wall is destructible. Today I'm going to work on my wall a little bit, maybe do a few other things, get into a little bit of trouble, and talk about a little bit of news. I mean, in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic and a vocal, let's say autocratically motivated minority of people who are possessed of the belief that if the coronavirus does not kill 1% of our population, some 80 million people, then coronavirus was just never a threat, I suppose. I designed this super well, and I'm so proud of it. Anyway, the reality is that when you respond to a crisis intelligently, with foresight, and with all of the resources humanity can wield, there is, and let's not be hyperbolic here, no crisis which is not trivial. One may be put out by the effort involved, that is to say, some amount of effort, but that will be inevitably less than the crisis that effort averts. It is the logic of a child to believe that because we have responded to something correctly and mitigated the danger that it was, that somehow it wasn't a threat. This is a perspective in which a person cannot see past their own nose. Only what they see, what is presented before them unambiguously, perhaps with the generic fill-in track selected by the director during initial editing. Only that's a threat. I rail on Hollywood a lot. Well, okay, that should clearly read I rail against Hollywood a lot. There is a lot of feedback between the slop they put out and the slop that people expect of them. I understand that. However, the almost pathological drive they have to eliminate ambiguity from media is something which I believe has played a part in the ability of people to, like on demand sometimes, fail to believe anything which does not have a full narrative force backing it. I mean, there are people who are the opposite, who will not see racism, homophobia, homosexuality, or other things, no matter how explicitly media shows it to them. And maybe one day I will make an entire episode focused on human willful belief and willful ignorance. My point is that nothing... What is my point? We see things and we also do a few things, and then sometimes stuff happens. We have a level of complacency. We like to believe that it will be okay. It would be easier if bad things had signs on them. We all do what we can with the uncertainty of our own judgment. And my point is that yes, the world would be easier if all of the threats were fully visible and like 100% destined to occur context, but they're not. We need to be skeptical, yes, but we also need to be vigilant. An entire generation of stability and success and reasonable caution seems to have engendered a belief that catastrophe cannot happen because catastrophe has not happened. And the truth could not be further from that. It is literally insane to me that the social axis, which I have seen for so long advocate for constant vigilance, has become so comfortable with discarding caution, respect for the dangers the world possesses, and common fucking sense. It is incomprehensible to see conservatives prostrate themselves out of a determined, childlike defensive complacency. I just don't fucking get it. Y2K is a great example of not collectively remembering that these threats are real because we foresaw them, respected them, and stopped them. I also want to talk about talking to people on the internet. I think it's worthwhile to talk with people on the internet. It is not worth spending any one of those moments with people who are not interested in understanding what you're trying to say, because time is finite and we will all die. And look, there are plenty of people who will say, oh, hey, I don't understand. Please explain it to me. Yeah, we've all played that. Oh, I don't understand how someone can think whatever. Oh, there was someone who says your idea is to burn babies in the giant baby furnace. Why do you believe in burning babies in a giant baby furnace? And all of these things are just bait. It is a way to fight with people on the internet. And it is even rewarding to twist and misinterpret what people say in order to believe that you have some fact, no matter how shaky or unexamined. We question the facts of others to declare victory in arguments, regardless of any objective merit. And even if you don't do that, the point of this is not that you do it. I mean, maybe you do, I don't know. But collectively, we as a people do it. And we're just well, if we can find some flaw in what you're saying, then therefore all of my facts are right. And that's obviously not true. But it's also lazy. People argue on the internet because arguing is unpleasant. And if you're willing to argue for something, they will be happy to waste your time, to drain your spirit and your enthusiasm in spreading the things you believe simply out of pure hatred for your position. It is not that they need to make an argument. They just have to keep you from arguing somewhere else and discourage you from arguing in the future. Their goal is not intelligent discourse. It is simply to jam you up. I mean, look, some people are genuinely stupid. And I've gotten a lot of banners from, village dudes. So I'm just going to build up the next couple layers of my tower here and kind of put those banners up. So what I need to do is have a place lower down that I can reasonably store them. And I kind of forgot how I built this thing. It's got great construction. I just forgot how I constructed it. Right. Like the hobby of these stupid people is to argue with people, and they get a rush of dopamine or whatever neurotransmitter that is good that they get. Whenever they show up to do something stupid, people call them stupid. They list a bunch of untrue facts and then declare themselves the winner. Some people really get off on that shit. And there is no shame in identifying those people early and ignoring them or reporting or baiting them to waste their time, because those people contribute nothing and they never will. All they want to do is to start fighting so they can feel good about those fights. You should not waste your time on them. So, to some extent, it is worth arguing with people on the internet. Just kind of wave your flag around, Oh, I disagree with this. Oh, I agree with that. I think the Reddit downvote button is strong enough to say that. And I think that covers 99.9% of what people want to say on the internet. On Twitter, you can just find a top countervailing point for posts for a point you disagree with, and just like that. Look, I did a whole bit on how to internet a couple of months ago, and I'm still pretty satisfied with this, so maybe I won't go into that. Maybe I'll put it in one of the linked videos since I'm playing with that stuff now. But I was satisfied with it. I think it's good. I'm not going to repeat myself. What you don't want to do, though, is you don't want to invest your time or your energy, emotional energy or otherwise, in an argument where the other person is never going to listen to you. Why would you? That's insane. So it is important as much as you can to look into the history of people who disagree with you on the internet before you would try to engage them in good faith. It isn't, well, most first principle, if you're operating in good faith, but the other person, doesn't operate in good faith, then you're at an enormous disadvantage. You're literally wasting your time because you're trying to reasonably convince a person and they're determined not to let that happen. On the other hand, if you just, want to just foghorn blast, look into their history and just say, hey, look at your history. Your history is garbo. And that lets everybody else know that they're also garbo. Or to approach with some hesitance, right? To do their own research before engaging with that person because they're not interested in it. Look, in any like Twitter, Tumblr, Reddit, those are all places where people have long-standing accounts and you should check their history before you engage with them. I see people really get offended about this because they're shitty people. The people who get offended that you're looking at histories are shitty people. Like, I'm going to make a pretty broad statement on that because there's no reason to get offended by that. Like, you want to know who you're talking to before you talk to them? I mean, history's right there. Like, you can look and you can see, hey, look, you're not due the basic respect of a complete fucking stranger, dickbag. Obviously, fuck off. But, people rarely do that on the internet. So here's a public service announcement to do that and to let people know whenever you do that. So they don't accidentally engage with someone who's a real piece of shit. It also means that, new accounts should be viewed pretty skeptically. The ability to get an account started from any website is pretty easy. So every new account should be seen with a fair level of suspicion. I mean, I make it a pretty standard procedure to block, mute, or ignore just like every interaction I have with Twitter. On Twitter with someone whose username has 8 numbers at the end because it's just not worth it. Like, you don't have to have those 8 numbers. You just have a new account and you don't give a shit if that's what you got. So it's more of a personal flavor for me, but it's like the type of thing you should consider doing. I mean, my real recommendation is that, like every website's trying to get your phone number anyway. So you should at least make someone pay $40 or for like a GoPhone or something to make a new GoPhone number, to make an account and then otherwise lock out specific accounts and possibly even ISPs or machines where if they're banned or kicked. I feel like I'm rambling. I mean, obviously no social media site on earth is going to really, really permaban someone, right? Well, they don't want to like really get rid of people who violate their rules. They just want to put them in a timeout, let them right back because, the teeming, yelling, screaming, doxing masses are actually what drive their websites. The power that people think social media gives them over others, the tiny little battles they can win, that's why they're on it, mostly. A surefire way I have found to determine if someone is sincerely interested in your views is... I surprised myself going out into the dark woods at night for an arrow. But, cool. Is if they're trying to understand your perspective. If they can rephrase your argument in a generous way. Because like every dickbag is to say, oh, I'm sincerely curious. If someone says sincerely curious, slap them in the face. They're fucking not sincerely curious. Sorry, but that phrase has become a lot like calling someone a genius these days. Like, you just never take it seriously, nor should you if someone's genuinely interested. No. I think it's natural for a person to have a perspective and to understand that no idea that you transmit on the internet is going to be complete. So, like, another good indication is they address concerns that you have, even if you haven't voiced them. But, all the pedantry aside, I think it's natural that when you express an idea, you won't have, like, the whole idea. It's natural that there are caveats. There are exceptions. There are complexities. In the conversations that we have with other people, we have every right to advocate for things we know may not actually work. I think universal income's a fine idea. I think it would cut a lot of the unnecessary overhead that we have with the administration of aid. We have every right to just say, hey, look, people need help. Give them freaking money. How is this complicated? But it is complicated in many ways. And I'm not ignorant of that. Now, I'm not going to, whenever I'm discussing on the internet the merits of universal income or basic income or whatever it is, I'm not going to instantly undercut my own argument with my reservations about the complexity of it. I don't think any reasonable person would do that. And my reservations come from my lack of education. To a point, you should govern your ability to argue something so that it is proportional to your education about that. Nobody wants the most ignorant proponent of their views or of their solutions to be the one who's arguing it. And you shouldn't really nominate yourself to be that most ignorant member, discussing something if you are kind of ignorant about it. And, I realize the internet absolutely hates, vulnerability, and it does not, it starves on self-control and self-discipline, saying, well, I'm not. Okay, all right, cool, explosion, boom. No part of the internet rewards you for saying, I don't know a lot about this. I think this generally, and, if you were dealing with that person, you would just say, why are you arguing about it with me? So, or I guess you could just say, hey, look, okay, I get that you don't know that much. Here's something to look at. Here's some literature, read up on it. Being on the internet isn't about showing respect or finding consensus. I mean, it can be, but I think the culture disincentivizes that to some extent. I think a lot of that does boil down to Penny Arcade's greater internet fuckwad theory. I'll see if I can get a graphic to pop in here while I'm doing it. But, I think if you could just reach out and punch a motherfucker, people would be more respectful. I think people would also be bullies. Like, again, complexities. I just think you can argue against something all day. I mean, a Republican Party exists, QED. Any idiot can do that, and they frequently do. And how you spend your time is your own business. But if you're trying to argue for something, because you would like to build something or construct something or spread an idea in a way to have a positive effect on the world around you via the internet, well, first off, good luck to you, crazy bastard. Second off, work with an open mind and look for people who are the same way. Man, I really like my bass. Not to put too fine a point on it, to be like too obvious. My script ran really short. I could just have a short episode, but it's people just do not observe coronavirus stuff. This could have been nipped in the bud. There are countries that have like 0 outbreaks now. You know what they did? They wore masks. They downloaded little apps that tracked them, apps that weren't full of like malicious third-party pirate software, and then government tracked people and tested people, and that was it. And there are some people in this country who are so against giving people free medical aid in an emergency. You have people not getting tested and not getting diagnosed, and people who are still working, even though they have coronavirus. And we can't figure out why the rates are so high. And we don't want to do anything about it. We just don't want to do anything about it, man. This is just old man Van Velding's rambling about coronavirus stuff. If you disagree, I guess this isn't anything for you. If you're neutral on it, then I'm sorry, it's boring. And if you agree with me, we're just going to sit around agreeing with each other for the next couple of minutes. I mean, we just hate helping each other that much. We have turned what is a disaster that requires a collective response into some sort of Darwinian wheel of fortune. I would say Darwinian Candyland. It's not even a game, really. It's just whatever happens, happens. And, the actors of government that I've seen was like, oh, you have to prepare and you have to have good leadership and do stuff like that. They've become so enamored with their own anti-government, what is that? I wouldn't say fundamentalist ideology, that now they just feel like the only thing for government to do in a crisis ever is nothing. They just don't believe in government. So we're seeing a bunch of governors who are paralyzed by popular opinion and trapped in the ideology that if they govern at all, they're going to meet their own definitions of tyranny, which they will, because that's what they've done. They've claimed tyranny whenever, people of a different political spectrum have said, "Oh, well, the government can fix this," and they go, "No, that's tyranny," and therefore, the ideology now, conservative ideology in America, is currently, if we do anything, if we ask anything of people, that's tyranny. That's what we've established as part of our party platform. And now, a very clear, unambiguous case has come up to have government go, yeah, do this. And folks have believed this is tyranny. It is unfathomable. There's just nothing left of it. I'm going to repeat my prediction here that in the best of circumstances, Joe Biden, he just goes right up the middle, gets a bunch of people, gets some votes, wins. That's my hope. And then the Democratic Party can get started becoming the new conservative party of America. And hopefully, I feel like it would take a few election cycles, but maybe it won't. If Donald Trump loses, if Donald Trump wins, the country's just screwed. That's that eventuality. That's my game plan for there. That's my in-depth political analysis. We're all just fucked. As a country, yes, perhaps even as a planet. Russia thinks they can colonize the Siberian North in the middle of global warming. So, I look forward to The Walking Dead Siberian Defrost Edition, because that's how that's going to end for those fucking idiots. But regardless, China gets The Walking Dead. We just ran oopsie, China ran out of food again edition. So, oh wow, that actually breaks those. I forgot that broke those. So yeah, with any luck, Biden goes in there, forms the new, slightly further left Republican Party. All the fringe idiots get out their fringe idiocy, hopefully becoming completely irrelevant. And then the Republican Party just goes, damn, how can we horseshoe theory our way around this gap? And hopefully they become a real party of actual Christian values and working class people and actual anti-big government, but gosh, not communism yet, type of deal. That'd be a big shift. I don't know how they would do it, but we're not going to see a third party. Historically, that's what happens. If you look back in the 60s, the Southern strategy, what happened is a losing political party said, hey, what we're going to do is, we're becoming less relevant. We want to get the votes in the South. So what we're going to do is, and it was the Republican, what we're going to do is we're going to just appeal to the racists. A sustainable strategy that will never have any negative consequences. And so they did, and it worked. It's worked for about 40 years now, which isn't too bad in terms of an ideological, of tapping a political vein. And the thing is that ice they're skating is getting pretty thin. And, I believe what you're seeing a lot of with the voter suppression, things like that, is the temptation to not change, because the party's been the party of no compromise, no change. And as long as they can stay relevant on the national stage without that compromise, without that change, without a run, without getting a train of Democratic presidents run on them, which would be a nice eventuality in its own way. Again, as long as they don't pay any political price for that, then they won't change. They won't have to change. They can just tighten up voter restrictions across the country and just be a smaller and smaller minority with more and more extreme measures to keep people from voting them out. And it'll never have to change because, again, if politicians can pick their voters, then they have no reason to listen to those voters to address their concerns. And I think that Trump is the last gasp of populism these guys can offer. And so, it would come down to an increasingly desperate group of extremists. Very small group of people, 10% of the country, are really hardcore Republicans at this point, are really left on board with them. And if you were to give a bunch of reasonable, moderate, middle ground Republicans some kind of agreeable quasi-conservative alternative, I don't say Joe Biden light, but Joe Biden with real cane sugar. I don't know, man. I don't know how that metaphor works. I think it'd work out. Again, you would need a new left party, and the Republicans would need a new voter base. And all you need to do is find out where those two live wires connect. You just need to close that circuit, and I think you'd have a real... I know it sounds insane, but maybe not a real progressive party, not immediately in the Republican Party, but a real workers' party in the Republican Party. A real, maybe small government, maybe not small government, anti-big business, pro-worker type of party. And you could see a big realignment about that. So, I mean, if I thought that was really possible, I would need the actual Republican senators and reps that I could point to and go, they're ready to turn the horseshoe. They're ready to turn the horseshoe. But, and I know people hate horseshoe. Horseshoe theory is the theory that at the extremes of the political spectrum, the extremists have more in common than they do in the middle. So, like you could look at, well, that's a bad example. It is an example of extremism, not necessarily horseshoe theory related to politics, but for, say, an extremist Muslim and an extremist Christian to say, hey, gender roles, am I right? And the other one goes, yeah, hell yeah, you're right. Whereas they might otherwise hate each other. And you can say, hey, look, there's a lot of, there's communist and pro-union sentiment out in, rural places like West Virginia, where you can say, well, these aren't necessarily a place you might think of that, but if you're in a coal plant that's these doors are always weird for me. Anyway, I have rambled on. I think I've got enough. I will see you guys, and remember to keep asking questions and to keep learning.